Hey guys, welcome to Insights. This is presentation crash course number one, where our team takes look and also gives their perspective all about presentations. This is going to be number one, and we hope to join you guys very shortly for some more and more episodes. So my name is Colin. I've been in first for this is my ninth season competing. I really love this program. Growing up through FLL, I think it was 5 seasons, 4 seasons of FTC. So many presentations throughout all those QTs and all those league championships. I'm joined by my fabulous teammates here, Pahel and Trudy. Why don't you guys tell the viewers a little bit more about yourselves?
I'm Pahel. This is gonna be my sixth season participating in first, so 3 years of FLL, third year of FTC now. So also many presentations, not as many as Colin though.
My name is Shruti, and F I've done first for the same amount of years as Pahel, so 3 in FLL and then 3 in FTC. But just a slight like flexing section. Our FTC team has advanced to the World Championships 3 times, once by raffle, and then once in our second season, and then once this season. But then we got canceled on, so that did not happen. But we have done good presentations, so yeah, we have some credentials.
Some credentials. That's what we're all looking for
Yes.
now. Obviously, today's episode is all about presentations. I'd like to start us off on why I believe presentations are so important. So I know public speaking is a big thing that's now really pushed forward to. If you spend all your time in your hidey hole like a hermit, doing all this homework and all this grinding out numbers, right? You won't be able to learn how to speak to people. I think presentations are a great way. We're like-minded people of, hey, adults who want to see children grow, and then also children who want to push themselves actually grow. So I believe that's the main reason why presentations. I'll share my way embarrassing stories later on, but I guess Shruti or Fahal, do you have a take on why we should do presentations?
For
Oh,
sure.
oh,
So with technical capabilities, you can go about this far, and then if you wanna bring it further, you have to be good at presenting, whether it's to people higher up than you, etc. So good communication skills are essential for being successful. I actually remember talking to someone who participated in Toastmasters, and he said that before he participated in Toastmasters, he definitely had high technical skill, but he was kind of at like this roadblock where he couldn't promote. As soon as he joined Toastmasters, improved his communication and presentation skills, he definitely went up the chain of command.
and to add on to that, specifically with first, the presentation, you can, like what Pahel said, you can only get so far with a good robot, and the presentation is really key as in all first competitions, because that gives the judges like a taster of what your team actually is doing. Because if I did like a lot of outreach, but I just had a robot and I had a very bad presentation, the judges would never know what I have to offer on the table. So it's really important for all first teams to come up with good presentations and be able to lay a good foundation of knowledge about your team for the judge.
Yeah,
So
I
yeah.
think. Thank you guys so much for those comments. I think one of the for those unfamiliar, presentations are actually when we started, we're all very intrinsic in all 4 stages of FLL. Obviously, now we started, or pardon, FLL, not FLL. All 4 stages of first, for inspiration and recognition of science and technology. I think obviously, we've expanded programs now, so there's JFLL Discovery Edition, so we'll see what they have in store. But for those unfamiliar, presentations, like our my teammates mentioned, are like a way for the judges to scout out your team. So, for example, in FLL, they'll get all these. They'll listen to your project presentation and record down notes so that if you're announced for that glorious callback, then they'll know what the heck this team is talking about. For FTC, that same idea applies. It's a scouting presentation. You better pitch the heck out of your team to allow the judges to know what sort of questions to ask next. And obviously, the same holds for FRC in chairman's, where you pretty much pitch to the judges what your team has done and how sustainable it has been. So that's obviously the why of presentations. I want to sort of get into the how of presentations. So, Shruti, if you wouldn't mind, could you start us off with some presentation tips you've picked up throughout your years of first?
Well, one thing that we really focused on for this season was emphasizing the things that we weren't so good at and I guess keeping our excellence, I guess, kind of under wraps. So, for example, on our team specifically, we are excellent above and beyond at outreach. But in this case of our robot game is a little bit lackluster in comparison to how great we are at outreach. So, specifically for our presentation, our goal was to try to make our robot shine as much as our outreach. And the way we did this was by focusing a lot more time on the specific robotics section of our presentation and spending less time on our um, outreach. The way we did this was we didn't actually, let's say, like quantity wise talk more about our robot than our outreach. We did spend a large amount of time talking about outreach in our presentation, but we had a lot more people talk about the robot, and that kind of gives the illusion of there's more content on their robot versus their actual present or like their outreach. And like let's say our team is really good at our robot game, we would throw out a few stats here and there, and then emphasize some of the best components. And then our outreach, we would spend more time glorifying it. So we like we we have touched so many lives. We have done these many hours of outreach, and we have impacted such and such amount of people. So, by really focusing on the thing that you're not so good at, I guess that kind of covers it, kind of shields the fact that you're not so great at it because you think you are great at it. So that's why you're telling the judges about it a lot. But by hiding the things that you're good at, makes the judges want to come back and talk to you more about those aspects of your robot and your outreach. So that's one big strategy we followed this year. Pahal, do you want to touch on another one?
Yeah, so I think the first thing that I learned when I got into FLL was that the judges are there to have a conversation with you. They're not really there to put you above or below other teams, although at the end, that is their job. They're mostly interested in what you've done and how you did it. So just remember the judges are there to have a conversation with you. And that makes judging a lot more fun and interesting. Another thing is to talk about the topic that you're most passionate about. This is because the judges can kind of tell or like tune in to the fact that you aren't passionate about what you're talking about just because that doesn't come through in your speech. This is actually something that we learned from Coach O'Brien, who was our speaking coach throughout
Voice
this.
coach.
Yeah, voice coach. When you talk about what you're most passionate about and you highlight what you're most passionate about in that topic, you're able to show them that you truly love what you're doing. On top of that, keep everything as concise as possible. This isn't only for FTC, but for every presentation you will ever give. For example, when we gave a brief to the CEO of Northrop Grumman, we did have a time limit and we had to kind of keep it under this time limit and be as concise as possible to get our main points across. The same thing holds true for first judging. And this is because after you get everything out of the way, the judges can kind of identify what they should ask you about. So you'll be able to give them the information that you really want to give them. On top of this, definitely hint towards the judges to come to your pit area after judging is over, because that's when you're able to have better conversations with them. And again, remember, the judges are there to just talk to you and have fun with you. I remember getting like a Connect Award judge, and we just conversed about the Connect Award for a really long time. And this is because you're not nervous when you're talking to judges if you think of them as like your peers instead of someone that's there to cancel you.
Oh man,
Or
I wish I had these suggestions when I were younger and starting off my years. But I think we can all agree as we progress throughout the first progression, you start picking up these tips from not only your mentors, but then other teams and other mentors as well. Again, really harkening back to that friendly competition aspect that was emphasized so much when we were going up through the ranks. I think it's a great time to talk about when to do presentations. I know for us, right, we never can get enough practice about doing presentations. Why don't you start us off? How would your team approach a practice to a presentation?
Yep. So we actually start drafting the presentation weeks before it's due, but obviously procrastination. We do end up working on it a lot throughout the week before competition, but we try to assign our roles early on so that we're able to just kind of focus and perfect what we plan on talking about. So for practice judging sessions, we don't practice them casually, I guess. We go through the entire process of even walking into the room, saying hi to the judges, giving our entire presentation, and leaving. So we don't treat it casually, I guess. So that way, when it's actually time for judging, we're already used to kind of all of the formal procedures of walking in.
Fantastic. Shruti, do you want to add anything onto that?
yeah, I agree with everything that Pahal said. Another thing also, with like the preparation of your judging, is to make sure you have people ask you questions that you would be asked at a judging session. And of course, like no one knows what they're gonna be asked about at the actual judging session. Like you never know if you have a programming mechanical coach or like a person that wants to talk about your outreach. So, in any case, have a lot of people, like your parents, for example, or like different coaches, or even like another team's coaches, come over and like ask you some questions, because having multiple perspectives is the best way to come up with like different questions. So, the more questions you get asked, the more responses you have, and the more you get practice in that aspect, because the questions honestly are like, yeah, equally as important as the actual presentation, maybe even more like with FTC, especially since they do come and scout you. And on the note of like the judges coming and scouting you, I know a lot of judges have their own agenda. They're like, oh, we have to go to these teams, but like, don't be afraid to just go up to a judge and be like, "Oh, do you want to come to our pit? We have some stuff we want to show you." Like, don't be afraid of these judges, because like at the end of the day, you probably won't see them again until like the next year. So if you embarrass yourself, that's okay. And then on top of that, these judges are not people that want to hurt your feelings or people that want to be like rude on purpose, because their job is to learn from these kids and to judge them properly. And if you show your enthusiasm and like show the fact that you want people to come and listen to you talk about first, that just shows how excited you are about your team and how much you guys have to offer on the table. And yeah, that's one of the biggest things we do. And that's like, I guess one of the reasons we end up with like a lot of people in our pit area, because we just, even if they're not judges, I'll just like walk up to some random parents and be like, "Oh, do you want to talk? Do you want to learn about our team? Like we have a lot of stuff to offer." And that just shows how much you're connected to the program and how much you want to share. And that's something that's really good
Yep.
thing to show.
And kind of off of that, it's also important to go around and talk to other teams. You can learn a lot about not only like the programming, mechanical, etc. aspects. You can also see how they're engaging others and their presentation skills. But definitely, you can gain a lot of technical skill from just going and talking to other teams.
and pit designs. Like some teams just have like the craziest looking pits. So like it's always good to go look at that. I remember when we went to our super regionals, Pahel and I actually like arrived in Washington at like the same time. So we went to the competition area just to like look. And that was like our very first big competition. So there's like teams with cranes like setting up their pit area. It was a lot of fun. So always like don't be shy of other teams because they're definitely just as nervous as you about their competition. So yeah, it's a community effort. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love how you guys tie the competition aspect and how you interact with others into the presentation. Because I just want to remind everyone, right? The presentation is not just in the tent or not just in the classroom. It really extends out to the entire competition, right? Everyone is looking to see, hey, which team I want to align with, right? All the judges are looking at like, hey, which team exemplifies and really looks like they're having the most fun during the competition. That's all played into and factored into the judging process. I guess we'll go into the embarrassing stories now. I think one of the things we can get heated our competition can get so heated that you may start booing for another team. So that's actually what old FLL team actually did in a terrible act of core values. Team came up with this insane strategy of launching a ball with their robot, and instead of using any of the motors, they take their hands using that mechanical force by human power and throw the ball with their hands instead of actually using a robot. And everyone in the stadium's like, boo, boo, that sucks, what the heck, no. But lo and behold, everyone that said boo, there's judges at the top of the stadium with the clipboard marking down everyone, and no one even noticed. So when competition came, we were actually tied for an award, and guess what? We did not get it because we were bumped down to third place instead of second because our lack of core values. But the judging is in place to really provide as much feedback as possible for the teams. I know in FLL Legoland, so many teams like, heck yeah, we're gonna go on rides, but they forget to pick up their rubrics. Rubrics are one of the best things of FLL, right? Those four columns, I believe 16 rows of all of the um, um, beginner to exemplary. It's super important for reflection. I guess you guys want to share how you guys use the rubrics, the judging rubrics, FLL judges to provided you guys to better yourselves for the next competition.
Yeah. Shruti can go.
Oh, okay, thank you. Um, well, for first or for FTC specifically, because like that's the competition we did recently. Um, we use our rubrics. We used a rubric provided by our region to basically have as like a checkbox to make sure we like get every point that the judges want to hear from us. So let's say they want to hear about sustainability. We will specifically have a line there, and then we'll be like, okay, check sustainability off. Um, Also, when people come to like listen to our presentation, we'll have them actually use the rubric to judges. Like for example, one of our old FLL coach, when he came to listen to our presentation, he went directly off the rubric to tell us and like rate us in each area. So we knew exactly what we needed to fix in terms of our presentation. Pahal, do you want to talk about what the FLL rubrics?
Yeah. Actually, before I get into the rubric, just to add an anecdote onto that, we actually decided to put a lot of emphasis on the Connect Award because of this rubric, because we were consistently scoring low in the Connect Award by the people that were judging us at home. So we actually put more emphasis on it, and at competition day, we even got multiple Connect Award judges to come over to our pit. In FLL, during the qualification tournament, we actually used to consistently score first place overall, and this is because we would take the feedback from, or yeah, we take the feedback from our judges. First, we take it from the super regional competition to the Legoland competition, we look at the feedback that we got and kind of base our presentation off of that. One example of this is when we received a programming award at Legoland, and this is basically completely based off of reflections on the rubric, because we noticed that we weren't talking enough about the technical details in programming. And then we also used to use previous year's rubrics to improve the next year and get first place again.
Yeah, so for the viewers who are not San Diego natives, one of the biggest motivators for all FLL teams down here in the South Coast is our regional competition is actually held at Legoland. So imagine that
Pretty
straight
lit.
from your QT, you get this ticket and you get to go to Legoland. You don't even need to go to Worlds. You don't need to deal with any of these Festival of Champions, and you don't even need to draw straws for it to go to Legoland. You straight up after QT, you get to go to Legoland. So that's one of the biggest motivators, and then also one of the biggest things us the FLL teams here in San Diego are so spoiled to have, where you're able to really engage with the entire Legoland hotel for your judging room. Are you kidding me? Like, you get to go into a hotel themed on Lego. It's insane. But one of the biggest things that was mentioned prior was to identify those areas at your weekend, and then also keep a track about it all the way throughout your year. And all the seasons prior, to really emphasize, hey, what can we improve on? I think now, yeah, we've covered most of the topics to really elevate your presentation. We'll save many more topics later on, but I guess I'll start off with another story. I guess always understand that everyone's in a learning process. I remember my first year way back when 2011, actually, Food Factor in FLL, way back when we're in EV3, the educational version 3 robotics kick was not even out. So we had the NXT robot. And for those of you who don't know, it was those ancient three motor port, four sensor port, orange and white motors. But I was shorter than the table actually that I'm sitting in. We had these super rad old Navy hats with all these fluffy things at the top to represent our mascot. But I remember we're trooping into our FLL qualification tournament hosted by one of the local FRC teams here, the Holy Cows, and I was given this 2 sentence line strip of paper to troop into the presentation with. But actually, one of the biggest things is that, hey, that first year, our head coach, I believe this was his first year of FLL, so they all went through all the requirements week one, right? And but then a week before our QT, they're like, "Oh shoot, you know we have a presentation, right?" And everyone's like, "What presentation? What?" Right? All the coaches like, "Yeah, I knew that. I didn't want to do that, right?" So I think one of the big never spoiler alert, our presentation wasn't great, but we were able to take that rubric and grow from it. So I think one of the biggest things that we want to achieve during this is document all of our struggles and then all of our travesties, if you will, and understand that, hey, we were all once rookies as well, and it's okay to make mistakes. So that was my first ever competition, and it definitely left a lasting impression on me. So that's my story. I guess, Trudy, we want to share out one of your presentation stories from the years.
Oh, well, here's a funny, I guess, kind of funny story. I remember it was our third and final year of FLL, and we had done FLL with another coach for a while, and then for like 2 years, and then we go to this competition. Pahel's dad is our new main coach, so yeah, our old coach though turns out was one of our callback judges. So when we got our call back, we were told to go into this room with our judges, and I had no clue that this was gonna be our judge. And since we're Indian, of course, we address people, adults, by calling them Uncle Blank. So I would call our coach or Rajesh Uncle, and I ended up going into the room and addressing him by saying, Hi, Rajesh uncle, because I didn't realize he was our judge. So, yeah, just I guess think before you say things like that. I guess I'll just talk about a competition experience. Specifically with competitions, I know Pahel mentioned this earlier. But like, don't be scared to talk to other teams, because honestly, other teams are super friendly. Like, one of our good friends that we're still in contact with, even though we haven't seen her in like 2 years, at our very first big competition in Washington State, we talked to our neighboring team, Technova, without knowing that they were like a super good robotics team, and it ended up winning the world championship. But anyways, we went and we started talking to them, and we actually became really good friends. And this season also we video called them and asked them for strategies in our presentation, and that was actually one of the strategies they gave us, with like the highlight the things you're good highlight the things you're not so good at, and then like hide the things you're really good at for like a surprise at the end. But yeah, like it's really, the robotics community is honestly like almost everyone is very similar to you. So like don't be afraid to talk to new people that are not on your team, because honestly the people that you'll meet are like just like you and probably doing things like even better than you. So you'll like learn a lot from them, and yeah, that's a great way to make friends in other places around the world. Definitely.
Yeah. Um, I guess one of my a common trend among every presentation I've ever given, I'm given the role like right before we're supposed to present. Um, so like one example of this is during FLL when I was supposed to give our programming presentation. Uh, um, I learned the circumference of a circle, I think at like 12 a.m. the night before competition, and that was actually one of the questions the judges asked was, how are we getting a robot to move in inches? So my biggest tip is to just keep learning and be dynamic, kind of go with the flow. So like another example of this is that 2 years ago, I think it was 2 years ago, I got home from India the night before we were supposed to have a regional competition, and I also got a presentation part that same day. And then the same thing happened when I got the Connect Award part for the presentation. I think it wasn't as late, but it was pretty soon before competition. So I guess just remember to go with the flow. It doesn't matter what happens. Just believe in yourself, and I guess fake it till you make it, right? Be confident about what you're talking about, even though you might not have any idea about what's going on. That's something I've been doing for a while now, since I had to explain the circumference of a circle.
But yeah, I'm sure we have many, many, many more stories, but we can't tell them all here, or else you guys simply will not come to our other episodes, so we'll save them for a later time. I've had a blast talking with both of my teammates, seeing both of you guys here in face on my computer. It's been an absolute blast. Do you guys want to leave the people with anything?
Um, okay, so I guess we are filming this like before the first season even starts. Clearly. But all of if any of you guys see this before next season starts, please start first as soon as possible, because the earlier you start, the more things you can learn, so the more boxes you can check off. And honestly, ultimately, if you start your presentation as early as possible, you'll be far less stressed when competition comes. And that's something you do not want at actual competition.
Yep.
Yeah.
I guess just remember to take a breather, genuinely have fun with what you're doing, right? We went to the park at 10 p.m. When we got
Save
too
the
stressed out,
story! Save the story! But
I'll
yeah,
save it,
continue.
um but just remember to just genuinely have fun with your presentation because that's the only way you'll do it well.
Alrighty, well, it's been a blast. See you guys next time. This has been Cole and Trudy and Fahel. We're going to be signing off for Team Inspiration. We'll We'll see you guys very soon.
Bye.
That was stink.